uh, let's change tack now and shift a little into the activism space. So, one of the things that you speak about in your book, The Uncommon Book of Prayer, which I found really fascinating, is this idea of our relationship with the earth and the idea that we can either be in an extractive vibration, let's say an extractive relationship, or in a co-creational relationship. And you write about that in quite a lot of detail. And I found it, the subtlety of the way you write, very compelling. And I mean, something you also speak about in the book, and of course is an obvious parallel, is the way that we interact with the earth is a mirror of how we're also interacting in other spaces in our lives. Like, are we going in to get something, or are we going in to co-create? And I'd love if you could speak about this a little bit before I hand over to you. I just wanted to share a little story that happened to me yesterday that really, because I was thinking about this interview and I was thinking about your work, and this is a very mundane example, but it really landed for me. So one of my children went on a play date with his best friend, and when I went to go and pick him up from the play date, the mother said to me, oh, I feel bad because you've had our child a lot more than I've had your child, and there's an imbalance. And, I'll be really happy to make that time up in the holidays. Make sure you ask me if you need, care for your son at any point, which was really lovely. But I felt immediately like a little kind of contraction because it felt so transactional. It was kind of
Hmm.
like,
Hmm.
I've done something for you, you've done something for me, and we're keeping score. It's like, how many hours did you have, Max, and how many hours? And it felt, and so I said to her just spontaneously in the moment, I was like, it's fine. Like, we're just all doing this together. We're parenting together. We're trying to get through life together. Like, it's a community. I'm not keeping a score. And that kind of, it's a very mundane example, but it felt pertinent to this question around co-creation versus kind of transaction almost.
Totally. And it's so interesting that you said that because the way that I arrived at this theory, if you want to call it that, was based on human interaction because I support survivors of complex trauma and narcissistic abuse. So that's people who have had power used against them. They were in incredibly extractive relationships. And so everything is a mirror for how we are with the earth. And if you believe that nature and earth have an intelligence, then our interaction with it is actually relational. And it can be reciprocal and co-creative, or it can be extractive. The energy is only going one way. And it's not surprising to me that you had that experience because I think on the playground, because I think a lot of us are confused between unconditional love and conditional love. And many of us were indoctrinated into conditional love, which is you do something for me, I'll give you this conditional kind of love or care or praise. And that is transactional, right? So that's kind of where that comes from.
Mm, mm. And in terms of our relationship to the earth, I mean, in many ways this is obvious, but can you give us some examples? Like, can you kind of help us to understand a little bit, like what it might look like to be in co-creation and what it might look like to be, I mean, the extractive part doesn't really require much explanation. We're coming close to Christmas right now, and I'm
Mhm.
trying so hard not to
Mm.
create a couple of weeks that are just a train wreck for the environment. It's like, it
Yeah,
feels like an uphill battle.
yeah, I know. I know. Yeah, the extraction from the earth it is the way that the planet operates, unfortunately, according to the dominant paradigm. Um, it wasn't, it's not the feminine way, it's not the way that it used to be, but it's taking elements, land, people, using people as commodities. People are disposable, plants, animals, minerals, wisdom traditions, and then taking the money and the profit from those things is going out of the earth, away from the people, plants, animals. And then this is leading to depletion, debt, inequity, pollution, and then whatever is left over goes back to the earth. And then we've just been cycling through this, right? For thousands of years. And in contrast, sorry, I have to let my cat out of the door. Hold
Please.
on. Hey, there you go. Um, in contrast, you have a more co-creative relationship with the earth, which is being in reciprocity. It's knowing that all life has its own intelligence. So where can you bring more balance? Where can you, yeah, of course, like cut down on consumption if that's an option for you. Um, and then where do you have the opportunity to give back? And maybe that's um financially, maybe that is producing your own food, maybe that is composting, there are like more options becoming available. I don't know about in Australia, but here, like there's a real movement happening to create more of a reciprocal, healthy relationship with the earth. But it's still going against the dominant culture. So it does feel like an uphill battle for now anyway.
Yeah, and you're right, same here. There's plenty of opportunities emerging more and more for us to be in that more reciprocal relationship for sure. Um,
Hmm.
it's interesting. I feel like what you just said about wisdom traditions and sort of being extractive, and then what when money isn't cycling back to source, made me think about the idea of cultural appropriation, and that there's a piece in there around cultural appropriation, which as people that practice yoga, I'm very concerned with and interested in this conversation as a white woman practicing yoga. Um, there's something around like culturally when we just go in and we take a little piece of something, and then especially if that is then monetized, that it's
Hmm.
quite
Hmm.
difficult. And I'm wondering, I mean, this is a massive question. I don't expect you to have like a perfect answer, but maybe there are some thoughts or ideas you have around how we can avoid culturally appropriating from wisdom traditions. Like, what has that looked like, for example, in your own practice? I'm sure you draw from many different bodies of work and teachings that go back to
Hmm.
different ancestral pathways. Like, how do we reconcile that with not being extractive as people that are not necessarily from those ancestral lineages?
Yeah, I really appreciate that question. And it is something that I go into in the book. And it is a bit of a gray, it can be a gray area. But in general, you want to bring more consciousness to those practices that you are curious about or borrowing from. What is their history? If it's another group, like what is their heritage? What kind of opposition have they faced? Is it an open practice? Is it a closed practice? Some traditions you have to be formally invited, you have to have permission. Um, yeah, if you're making money on something, then you need to find a way to give money back. And or at least give credit where it's due. And I think a place where I know I was guilty of this for a long time is just like objectifying certain groups and people because they were indigenous and assuming that, well, they have all the answers and I don't know, I'm a white person and I don't know anything. And that's harmful too. So we have to be careful about reinforcing that pattern. Um, and so yeah, I think there's plenty of ways to avoid harm for sure. And you just want to be respectful and more intentional.
Mm. Yeah, and I think to add to that idea of sort of assuming that Indigenous people will, you know, desire to share their experiences and their wisdom. It's also assuming that they will at all times wish to represent Indigenous,
Right.
in our case, it'd be Indigenous Australia. It's again, I mean, I'm giving lots of references to my kids today for some reason it's springing to mind, but I think of a mother of a child at my children's primary school who is Indigenous and said he's really tired of always doing the acknowledgement of country just because he's
Mm.
Indigenous. Like he doesn't want to get up in assembly every week and
Yeah.
be the token Indigenous child that reads the acknowledgement of country. Like sometimes he doesn't want to do that. He doesn't want to fly the Aboriginal flag. And I think I think it's really important that because sometimes it can kind of be with good intention that we want to create spaces, but then, it's also like, do people always want to step into those spaces? And it's not for us to kind of decide and control
Yeah.
how that runs.
Yeah, absolutely. And it might also be an invitation to dig more deeply into your own ancestry. What are your traditions beyond your immediate family? But like if you trace your lineage back, there's lots to explore there for sure.
Yeah. I want to change tack just a little bit and ask you about the idea of contentment. And this is something you write about in the book as well, particularly in the context of not always being in the mode of asking and petitioning. The book is about prayer, and one of the things that you tackle in the book is the idea that, it's okay to work with manifestation. It's okay to work with desire and to work with what it is that we want to bring into our lives. But also, there's a point at which the practice of contentment is really powerful and really important. And because this summit is about activism, I'm really interested in your perspective around how, and again, this is a huge question, but how do we balance contentment and a feeling of ease in our lives with not becoming complacent or kind of not inactive because we're just kind of like, I just want to be zen, I just want to be chill, I just want to
Mhm.
be content and peaceful, and meanwhile the world is burning. Like how, yeah, I guess in your own life, how have you found that balance, and like any thoughts you have around that?
Totally. I want to just speak to a little bit to the why of it because I do think this is related to the extractive relationship we have to the earth and how that has translated into the wellness world of which you and I are a part, and how we have become so centered on our problems or our perceived problems or what we want, what we need. It's completely out of balance and it's not sustainable. And I don't think that always centering that is well, it's hugely problematic, and it brings us it's the polar opposite of being content. And so contentment is more of an empowered position, and it's active, it's where you can grow, and it's knowing that you have enough. And that is, I think, one of the biggest antidotes to this like capitalistic um, brainwashing that we have to constantly be challenging is that we don't have enough. Most of it, of course, there are many people that do not have enough, but people like me and you have more than enough, right? And this doesn't just go for our physical material goods, but how we're resourced in terms of our health and so anyway, complacency on the other hand is kind of more of a victimized position because you're bypassing, it's more passive and um yeah, you're just kind of like rolling over and letting and just saying I'm not getting involved and that's an easy way out. And maybe you need to do that sometimes, of course, but that is not the same as contentment, which is knowing that you have enough.
Mm. And I think, another one of the areas that we're so incredibly resourced these days, more and more with AI, is knowledge. Like we just have access to so
Mhm.
much
Too
wisdom.
much, too
Yeah, too
much.
much, 100%. And then we can't, like, it's totally overwhelming. But that is a gift that we have this resource that we don't, everything is available to us. And I personally, to speak for myself, I feel a sense of duty. I feel a sense of obligation to do something with that, to within
Mhm.
whatever my capacity is, to utilize the great privilege that I have and make some sort of contribution, or at least start some helpful and interesting conversations. I think
Mhm.
that's a big goal for me in the company, looking at the state of the world, and personally, again, just speaking myself, feeling very disappointed with the outcome of the recent US election. And um, yeah, just seeing that there is so much suffering and asking the question, well, what contribution can I make? And I feel that conversations like the one that we're having now, that really sow the seeds for thought around change and what new paradigms could look like, they're really, really important. And in a world of complete overload, if we can sort through some of the noise and get some clarity, um, I think that will be very helpful for all of us.
Yeah, I agree.
I have a couple more questions for you. I'd love to know what you're working on at the moment, like what exciting new projects you have. Is there a new book in
Mhm.
the pipeline? Like what are your juicy new projects right now? And then also, this is a question we're asking all of the presenters in the summit. What are you personally reading or listening to or watching at the moment? And that could be completely nothing to do with anything we've spoken about.
Okay, got it. Um, yes, other people, I'm getting questions of what am I doing next?
Yeah.
And I have to say, I'm just resting right now. I'm still integrating the book, being out in the world, and I'm having some wonderful conversations with people, which I'm really enjoying. And I feel like I want to keep the momentum going around it gently, because I just want to give it the chance, I just wanted to give it the good energy that it deserves to be out in the world doing its work. And I really love this time of year between the solstice and New Year's. I love to go inward and be very in my prayers and rituals. And um, so yeah, this is a very sacred time for me. And I'm actually reading, I pulled it over here. I'm reading this really cool book that I found called Pagan Christmas. And it's all about, I mean, Christmas is pagan AF. And it's really great. It has lots of illustrations and it talks about the ethnobotany of Christmas. And I highly recommend it. So I'm really enjoying that. And I'm also reading this fantastic book called Mysticism by a man named Simon Critchley, who is a philosophy professor. It's mostly on the Christian mystics through like medieval to like, I don't know, through the Renaissance. So it's kind of specific to a certain kind of mystic. But I really love his style of writing, and it's pretty fascinating to read about people who had just like had it with humanity at that time and just went all the way into their experience of spirituality. And then what was the other one when I'm wa listening to or watching?
Yeah, listening to or watching.
I listen to a lot of Bill Evans, who's a jazz musician, and I like to drink tea and hang out with my cats and listen to jazz. And what am I watching? I'm watching, my husband and I are starting to watch that show, The Agency
Oh, yeah, I think I've
on
seen it. Yeah.
Netflix. It's a really great cast. It's not my normal kind of, but it's pretty psychological. So
Yeah.
yeah.
I love that. It's so funny. It's sort of almost comical when I've been asking this question to all of the different presenters, with the open-ended possibility that, you could share something very light and fluffy, but we're all such nerds and we're so passionately into our subject. It's always like, oh, I'm reading this huge tome on feminism, or, this deep book about the ancient medieval Catholic mystics. Like,
Uh-huh. Yeah.
we're definitely all spending our spare time deeply immersed in, you know, the subjects that we're passionate about,
Oh,
which is
good. Well, that's encouraging to hear.
yeah, yeah. I want to give one last shout out to your book and strongly encourage everyone who's watching and listening to grab themselves a copy. It really is extraordinary. I have really loved this book and appreciated you for writing it. So thank you. And of course, we'll share the link, below the video so people can easily get to that, along with the links of the other things that you mentioned. Heidi, thank you so much for your time today. I'm
Thank you
so
so
grateful
much.
to you and for the work that you do and for the time that you've made for us. And I'm a little bit jealous of everyone who's in the Northern Hemisphere because I'm originally from the UK and I love a Northern Hemisphere cold hibernation Christmas. And
Oh,
Christmas in Australia, even though I've lived here for 20 years, is weird and hot. And
I was thinking about that.
yeah,
Yeah, that would be weird for me
I
too.
will
Yeah.
never get used to it. In fact, I'm not homesick for anything anymore. I've been here so long. Christmas is the only time I'm like, just
Mhm.
Christmas on the beach is weird. Anyway, enjoy your nice, cozy
Thank you.
hibernation time. Thank you,
Thank you
Heidi.
so much,
Take care.
Katie. Bye.